Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here. I'm Cindy, and this is Christina. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We're going to give people just a few more folks to come from the waiting room into our meeting here, but we are excited to talk about getting around and going green. Our panelists are here. Katie and Lauren, our tech communications folks, are here, so we're excited. I'd encourage all of you to find your chat button at the bottom of the screen and use that for, questions, comments, take notes in the chat if you want. It's easy to save it afterwards. Our occasional DJ, DJ Cesar Antonio, or Antonio Caesar, TJ Antonio Caesar says, chat is your friend. So chat is our friend, helps us get connected and stay engaged. Make chat your friend. Well, people are still gathering, but let's go ahead and we can just get started, because I know most of us are here to ask questions and hear from our guest panel of EV owners. So let me just say, officially, welcome to our Green Climate Solutions. We are Faith in Place, and Faith in Place is an Illinois nonprofit that empowers people of all faiths to be leaders in caring for the earth, providing resources to connect, educate, and advocate for healthier communities. And at Faith in Place, we believe that when people of faith lead the environmental movement, it becomes a movement focused on justice and care for our common environment. And so we're excited to be part of that. Next slide. Yeah, we have offices around the state of Illinois. We were started in Chicago, and that's our largest office where most of our staff is based, but we also have offices from the far north, Lake County, the north and west suburbs. My office is in Urbana-Champaign, and our Southern Illinois office is actually in Marion, Illinois, so way down south. We try to get all of Illinois people interested and engaged in this environmental work that we share. Next. So we'd like to know where you are located, and I'm going to open up my chat right now so I can see. If you type in the chat where you're from, that would be awesome. And I can spell champagne correctly, which only happens about half the time. There we go. All right, there's our far north and Warrenville, Chicago, Mattoon. Super, super. Maybe one of our panel questions can be, could you drive from the one office to another if you could charge at each office? Some of us could, some of us couldn't. Next slide. I'm one of the presenters. I'm Cindy Shepard. I'm the Central Illinois Outreach Director. I'm also of the Presbyterian tradition, as you can tell from my clergy garb there. And yesterday, I had my husband take a picture of me in my clergy outfit with our leaf that we bought to show people what's possible in Central Illinois. So I'm joined today by Christina Krost, our policy coordinator. Christina, introduce yourself and take it away.
I am Christina Krost. I'm policy coordinator at Faith in Place. I live in East Central Illinois. I used to do a lot of work around our smart energy programs, but I've transitioned into a policy role, but all that information has served me well as we learn much more about what role efficiency has and our energy grid has, and how EVs have anything to do with all of that. Cindy, were you going to talk about smart energy? What was I talking about? Oh, wait, we need to go to today's solutions. Let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. So we'll talk about smart energy use, using what we know about how the grid works to make it work for us. We'll talk about our path to clean transportation and why it matters to our children and our future. We will have a panel discussion, which I'm really excited about, and then we'll have a call to action at the very end. And so we will talk about how you can get involved. There's lots of different ways, and kind of bring this conversation, maybe just to the forefront of your faith community, or maybe within your family, just to see what's possible. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. Cindy, were you talking about these smart energy programs? Or am I?
Yes, I am. But I'm on mute again. We're going to talk about becoming more energy efficient and how our transportation mode keys into that process. We've been talking about the smart energy programs that are available to Illinois residents, and you can give us the next slide, Katie. There are two ways that we can actually not respond to what the utility is offering, but also by our responses shape the future of our electric grid, which is, of course, going to have to be updated in the next few years. And as we use it, we help to form the shape of the electric grid in the future. One smart energy program, which I just want to say briefly, is peak time rewards. I think there's a slide about that. One of our staff members told us yesterday that she saved $2.10 last weekend because ComEd declared a peak time event, and she was signed up for peak energy. So she's getting a $2.10 rebate on her bill because she was able to turn down her electric use during a time when a lot of people had their air conditioners on high. Peak time rewards, it doesn't cost anything to join, and it's an opt-in. You can contact your utility provider about the possibility of signing up for peak time rewards, but peak time rewards is sort of small potatoes. The big money and the big energy shift happens when people participate in hourly pricing or power smart pricing. That's because most of us just pay for our electricity by a flat rate, but the utilities actually buy electricity on a variable rate. The price that they pay varies from hour to hour. And if we sign up for Power Smart or hourly pricing, then our price is based on that wholesale market. So consumers who sign up for this program opt into it. They pay a small monthly fee to participate, but that small fee is offset by the fact that if you shift energy use to times of low demand and low prices, that money comes back to you. And this is directly connected to our electric car use, because as electric car owners, we typically charge at our homes during the time from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. in the morning, when energy demand is at its lowest and when prices are at their lowest. By doing that, then electric car owners actually help to smooth out the grid, the demand on the grid, and improve grid reliability and help people plan for an electric system that's more efficient overall, not just in our homes, but overall to have a more efficient grid. And that's going to really serve all of us in the future. So we have a little poll we want you to answer in the chat. Oh, no, not in the chat. We've got an actual poll. Would you be interested in Power Smart pricing or peak time rewards? That's your first question. And people can just answer that. All right, we're getting some answers. We're getting some answers. We're getting some answers. Awesome.
And Cindy, how do people access these programs? What do they have to do?
They have to sign up for them with the utility. So having an online account with your utility and then checking their efficiency or smart energy programs, that's how they sign up. All right, excellent. We've got 70% said yes and 30% said peak time rewards only. Excellent. I hope that you will check that out with I'm sharing the results. Okay. Hope you'll check that out with your utility. It is one way for us to increase the energy of our grid overall. So I'm going to turn things over now to Christina to talk to us about why other reasons that electric vehicles matter.
Awesome. Thank you, Cindy. So we have talked about why this is important from an electric sector point of view, as electricity and the production of electricity is about 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. And this is the most current information we have from the US EPA. But if you look there at the little piece of pie that's just above where electricity is, transportation actually comes in a little bit higher at our greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So electric vehicles and electrifying our transportation sector could really reduce a lot of that down, those emissions down, if we do it correctly and thoughtfully and systematically. So let's go to the next slide. So when we talk about transitioning electricity or transitioning to electric vehicles, I often think about mass transportation as well. We're going to talk in our panel about what individual transition might look like to electric vehicles, but I wanted to talk really quickly about what electrifying mass transit and specifically school buses, as an example, could look like and how that really impacts health and emissions in our communities. So these slides come from the Environmental Law and Policy Center as they educate folks around the Volkswagen settlement funds that Illinois has and how we can use those thoughtfully to reduce the impact of emissions on communities. And so dirty buses, school buses in particular, equals sick kids. As a mother of a child who has asthma, this is particularly important to me. And we know that since kids are small, toxins from air pollution are much harder on their systems than on adults. And if you're sitting on a bus with your windows closed on a diesel bus for several hours a day, you are absolutely exposed to that kind of pollution quite a bit for your little self. So, and as I live in a fairly rural area, some of these kids are spending a lot of time on school buses. And so we want to do the best that we can to improve that for our children. So let's go to the next slide. So here are some of the benefits. Again, this is from the Environmental Law and Policy Center, but some benefits of the of electric school buses and that transition that would reduce school absences. As the mother, again, of a child who has asthma, I cannot tell you how much school my child has missed from having pneumonia and things like that over the years. It adds up and it causes delays in education. And so looking at reducing those greenhouse gas emissions by replacing these buses with electric buses could result in fewer absences from school. Also could save healthcare costs and things like that to families. As again, someone who has a child with asthma, taking her to doctors in St. Louis and Chicago from where I live in, central Illinois, there's a cost to that. And not everybody can afford to seek out that kind of attention for their child. So less noise pollution is also an interesting benefit. And drivers of these electric vehicles report that the children behave better on the buses because they are quieter. They're not having to talk so loud to hear each other. I know personally, I have an electric vehicle and, it's very quiet. Can you imagine a quiet school bus? I don't know. Is that like a rite of passage? So the benefits of electric school buses could really result in a public health improvement for our children. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in addition though to the health improvements, having these electric school buses attached to the grid, as Cindy was talking about a little bit earlier, can serve a purpose during our peak demand times. And you can see at this really cool graphic here, school buses are only being used, a very small fraction of the day, but when they are being charged, they can be used as batteries. And taking that energy to places that might need it in an emergency is a really cool way that we could be using these electric vehicle or these electric bus fleets around the state. I know that there is some electric buses in Pekin, Illinois. So if you live near there, you might want to inquire as to what they do with their electric school buses, but they're not really widespread yet. The good news is that there's an electric bus manufacturer coming to the state of Illinois here real soon. So this might become a reality for a lot more school districts in the future. And so, as you can see, it's not just a public health improvement, it's also a grid improvement and a resilience improvement for our state. Let's go to the next slide. And so all of this will be possible, some of it from the Volkswagen settlement money that comes to our state, but also through just climate policies like the Clean Energy Jobs Act or whatever comprehensive energy legislation is passed by the State House, hopefully very soon, hopefully next month or maybe the month after. But electric vehicles is part of the pillars of the Clean Energy Jobs Act, again, to help with our grid resilience, but to help also with the impacts on communities of color and low-income communities that are often transportation hubs and bear the burden of the air pollution in our state. So the Clean Energy Jobs Act is looking to reduce the pollution equivalent of 1 million gas and diesel powered vehicles from the road. Some of that will be the medium to heavy duty vehicles, but a lot of that will be, just people getting EVs and having rebates and things like that available from the state to be able to make that affordable in new cars and also in used cars. Let's go to the next slide. So let's transition a little bit into talking about these EVs. I have yet to meet someone who has one who doesn't want to talk about it. So why do Americans want these electric vehicles? Many of them are concerned about the environment. That's really encouraging to me. But some are really encouraged about the economics of an electric vehicle and they want the savings that are involved. Some just like to keep up with technology and like the latest gadget. And some just want to use the carpool lane, which that's cool. I mean, whatever gets you there, right? So, but there are reasons why people want to have these EVs. And so we wanted to hear from some of those people to share their stories with us. So we're going to transition to the panel discussion. I'm going to introduce our panelists right now. So I think we're going to be able to look at everybody here in a minute. Here we come. So you've met Cindy Shepard. She's going to share with us about what her EV is like. Ginny Judd is also going to speak with us today. She is a member of the staff at Faith and Place. She's also a member of St. Mark's in Glen Ellen. We have Nathan Kipnis, who has a green architecture firm. He has roots in Illinois. He also has roots in Colorado right now. And Arthur Kramer, a member of St. Mark's in Glen Ellen as well. They are going to share with us their stories about their EVs. So I'm going to give you a prompt. Everyone's going to have a chance to share a little bit about that and just kick off our conversation. So I would like to hear from each of our panelists. What is your favorite thing about your EV? And maybe share one challenge that you have with your EV. So who wants to go first?
Well, I can start. I don't actually have an electric vehicle. I have what's called a hybrid plug-in. So the hybrid plug-in, when it's, after it's been plugged in and charged, which takes maybe 3 to 5 hours, I get about 12 miles of electric vehicle use. And then after that, it switches to a typical hybrid. I love the fact that there's a timer on it and I can say finish charging at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I know it's going to come on in time and it's going to be at the lowest possible time. So it's going to use, the least demanded electricity. And especially since COVID, almost all the driving I do is very, very local. And so I can usually get my errands done on mostly on just the electric charge. The challenge with it is it's front wheel drive and it's not great in snow and ice. So that is a problem. And we have a sloped driveway. So that's not been good.
Well, I can tell you about, so I have a Tesla Model 3. It's my third electric car. I've been driving them for 8 years now. And I mean, what's not to love about them? They're quiet, fast, no maintenance, just a blast to drive. And yeah, the maintenance, not only the maintenance, but the fuel cost is next to nothing. So I love that. I think that if there was one thing, I just wish it wasn't politicized. I have run into people that have weird views of what this thing is. I am very happy that Ford has come out with the F-150. I think that is going to nip that in the bud. I think that it would have been great to be in the boardroom when they were deciding which cars to pick to do electrified. And to pick the Mustang and the F-150 is genius. These are people that would normally not look at electric cars. And I think now when someone in Texas rolls around in an electric F-150, all their friends are going to be like, holy cow, I'm in. So, yeah.
Okay, yes, I think I agree with some of those points. I think it's well known in the Tesla community. The solution to this bias problem is to put the Tesla, what's called the Tesla grin on their face. Put them in your car, put the accelerator, put the go pedal to the floor for 2 seconds, and they're going to forget any politics they had. And it was a smart move, I think, of Tesla not to build a little, somebody else had to do this. The Leaf was critical, the Insight was critical, the Prius was as essential, but the next step had to be a high-end car. And so that was a good. So let's see, what do I like about it most? It's really the little details. It's the little things, like the fact that our entire music collection is on a thumb drive. Every bit of music we have, we can play anytime we want in the car. That was a follow-up. It also has built-in streaming, so that if you want to play something, you can simply say, play and give the name of the tune, and it will probably play that or something similar. The connectivity, the updates, not having to worry about that and never going to again, all those things. The biggest difficulty, honestly, is our previous car was, and we still have a Prius, it's going back to the other car because I go to put it in gear and I run the windshield wipers. And the other problem is that, let's see, I go to get out of the other car and leave, and I realize, oh, I needed to lock the door, didn't I?
Or turn the engine off. I've done that
There's nothing
many times.
when you drive the Tesla, and in most electric cars, I think will be like that. You walk up to the car, you get in it, you drive, you get to where you're going, you put it in park, and it warns you if you didn't, and you walk away, and there's nothing to do. There's nothing to start. The hardest part is going back to any other car, including one that you've been driving for 12 years.
Well, I drive a 2018 Leaf, and we have 2 cars in our family, one fully electric and the other another Nissan that is living out its natural life with me, and then it will go to that great car graveyard in the sky. But I really enjoy the Leaf. My favorite thing about it is when I can drive it to an event, and I'm so happy that things are kind of opening up again, and we can go to farmers markets and to church events and faith events, and I love to put on my table, ask me about my electric vehicle, because here in Central Illinois, electric vehicles are still pretty unusual, and I always get good conversations started when I am able to put that sign on my table and point out the window or down the parking lot to show them my Leaf. My challenge is that it is unlike the Tesla, Leafs come with a certain amount of range anxiety, and it was a real learning curve for my husband and me to figure out how far we could go, and that it recalculates based on how you drove last time. So if we drove a little fast out on the highway and then brought it back to town, it looked like we weren't going to be able to go very far. We could drive anywhere in town for several days on a charge, which is really great. But I went to Hudson, which is a small town north of Bloomington last week. It was 65 miles there and 65 miles back. And I had 165 on my rangefinder, but I didn't really trust it because I didn't know whether it knew that I was going to be on the highway. But it turned out fine. I got back and I had 30 miles to spare. So I think the car's getting smarter, even if I'm not.
So oh, go ahead, Cindy.
I was just going to invite people to put questions in the chat. If you've got questions for us, we already had one from Ray asked and answered by Nathan about the federal rebates. Nathan, you want to say more about how those rebates work?
Well, there's federal and state. So the federal ones are 7,500, which is a tax credit. So most people would benefit from that. There's a limited number, and then it starts that the government gives, and then it starts reducing the dollar amount. So Tesla's used them up, GM's used them up, and the other car companies I think are still all at 7,500. And then there's some state rebates. So right now I'm in Boulder, Colorado, and I know they have some out here. So you just have to check and see if your local municipality or state offers anything else.
And then do those renew every year? When you said Tesla's used theirs up, that's it?
No, so unless the federal government reauthorizes or modifies that, I don't remember the number, but it was, like 300,000 cars or something. And after that, and when you get to a certain amount, it goes to half of that. When you get to another amount, it gets to half of that. So I was right before Tesla dropped from 7,500 down to 3,750. So I got the full amount. So you just have to check into that. But I think all the other car companies are so new right now that they're all at 7,500.
I know in Illinois, we were hoping that the Clean Energy Jobs Act would include a rebate that was for used electric vehicles, because that would make them more accessible for low-income families and also people like students who, I think it's a perfect teenage car because there's no maintenance. You don't have to, they won't blow up the battery if they don't have the right things. It's just a low maintenance, low fuss and muss car. So we hope that when that passes, that we'll be able to have our the used ones also have a small state incentive.
Very good. And there'll be an opportunity to take some action here at the end to tell your legislators that you want to see that change happen. I was curious about what made you make the switch. We saw that slide about why people are opting for these EVs, but that's data of people I've never met, but I've met you all. And so what made you make this decision to switch to an EV?
Well, if I can start, because it's a similar related thing. And I'll start with the Prius. We got a Prius, 18 years ago when they were first coming out, and there was a long delay to get them. And we're a little concerned. It seemed like a good idea in principle, but is it really okay? And this is a faith issue. You're going to take that leap of faith on something brand new? And two things sort of convinced us. One, we had to visit San Francisco for business. And around town, we saw Priuses. We were worried that those little wimpy, weak cars might not be okay. And you saw the Priuses zipping up and down the hills of San Francisco without hesitation. We said, okay, they can run around town just fine. That's not a problem if they can handle San Francisco hills. The other thing is faith-based. we were attending an event at Marion Joy Rehabilitation Center, where the Marion Joy nuns are living, Franciscan nuns. And we noticed that the nuns, of course, share everything in common. And they have a little fleet of cars they share and drive around. And they were all driving Priuses. Their fleet was Priuses. We figured, now, in retrospect, nuns are pretty radical. But if the nuns could drive Priuses, I guess it's okay. So that convinced us to do that. Then the Tesla came along. And again, everybody knows about Elon Musk time. It's always ambitious. You don't expect things to happen in time, but it seemed like a good vision. And it wasn't a lot of money to put down. You'd get it all back if it didn't work. The Prius was getting to be about 10 years old at that point, needed to be replaced. And so it seemed like a good idea to put the money down and see how it worked. The specifications were good. The other reason we got that was that we had recently encountered my 90-plus-year-old father driving around town in California. His vision wasn't what it should be, but he had been a Navy pilot in his youth. He drove like a Navy pilot. He couldn't really see. He shouldn't have been driving to Denny's. And I thought, gee, in another 10 years, maybe I'd like to buy a car that could protect me a little more from myself. And so that was one of the things that tipped us.
I'll go next. And I'll say we bought, my husband bought the car for our family in 2018. And also that year, both of us had our first grandchildren. And I think that what we knew about the future of our planet and climate change and the need to cut carbon emissions just was brought home to us when we held those little babies. And we thought, I can't do everything, but this I can do. And everybody's got to do whatever they can to make a difference. So I'm happy to be part of Faith in Place. I'm happy to advocate for clean air and through policy change. And I think that that's ultimately where a lot of our energy needs to be. But also these small changes, these personal changes are like a spiritual discipline to me to keep me focused on how urgent the problem is and how important it is that we get it solved in time.
And
So,
go ahead.
Jane.
Well,
No, go ahead.
you're the reason, Nate Kipnis, that I switched. I had been driving a small SUV and I visited you and we talked about a lot of different things. And you mentioned that you had a Leaf and that I think at that point it went maybe 70 or 90 miles. And I said, yeah, but I need something that's going to get me to Wisconsin on a regular basis, and that's never going to get me there. And you said, well, you should think about a hybrid or a hybrid plug-in. That might be just what you need. And so it took me until the following summer, and I bought a used Prius plug-in, and I had a hard time finding one. I had to go to Wisconsin to buy it because nobody in the Chicago area had one. But I'm really thankful that I did. And Nate, you're the reason that I did that.
All right. Well, I'm glad that worked out. Boy, when I was a little kid in '73, there was that oil embargo, and that blew my mind. And I knew I always wanted to be energy efficient. It's what steered me into sustainable architecture. My family's from Israel, and the whole, Arab-Israeli war thing and the embargo that followed kind of blew my mind. So, I was very interested in electric cars. I also got the Prius when it came out, that the curvy version, not the very first one, but I bought that sight unseen. And Jeannie, you know how hard that must be for me as an architect to buy something, a big purchase like that, but I knew that's what I wanted. And then I had a client in, a long time ago that had the original Roadster from Tesla. And he would let me drive that thing, bring it to like green shows. And that thing blew my mind. That was so much fun. So I knew I was going to get an electric car. And, we know what we need to do. Electricity is the currency for renewable energy. And if you want to support that, you have to go all electric. You have to get off fossil fuels. We have to decarbonize. And oh, by the way, it's a super fun thing to do, and it doesn't, and it's less a cost to run. And there's hardly a negative. I mean, honestly, almost no negative. So I just love it. And regarding the student cars or used cars, I had a BMW i3. I leased it at a pretty affordable rate, but it's a $56,000 car, and you can buy that now for $14,000. And it's a plug-in hybrid, basically, 80 miles of range and then 80 miles with gas. It does everything you want. For a used car, it's fantastic, and it's a BMW. So, yeah.
I think the only issue as a student car is for your child, you don't want it to go too fast. So you better be careful.
Yeah.
As someone who's about to have a brand new driver in her family, yes. But it was interesting to me when we were talking with my daughter about, what would be the kind of car you would be looking for. She's looking to kick my husband out of his plug-in hybrid car and have him get another one because having an EV was like her number one criteria, followed closely by the color of the car. I mean, let's not be, she's not entirely altruistic here, but that was important to her. So at 16 years old, she understood if I don't have to pay for gas, I might be able to do more things that I want to do around town instead of paying money for fuel. And I'm seeing a question come through the chat. So hold on and let me.
Yeah, that's a good question too about charging away from home and what the infrastructure like for that. We need to improve the infrastructure, but I would say that for my Leaf at the parking garage for my husband's work, there was a charging station, and it was reserved for electric vehicles, and he and the other electric vehicle person who parked there worked out a schedule. It was great. There are also charging stations available in the public parking garages in Champaign and Urbana, and I've seen them at hotels that are also for Leafs. Tesla has a really aggressive program of placing charging stations in public places, and I'll defer to the Tesla folks about that, but it's not impossible to find. I'll say there's an app that you get with your car that on your phone, and it shows you where the nearest charging stations were. So when I went to Hudson, I was prepared to recharge just a few miles down the road. Not that hard.
So I'm in Boulder right now, and we drove out from Evanston with the Tesla, and it was 7 stops, and the stops ranged from like 12 minutes to 35 minutes, I think. And it's not, so it was about 2 hours and 15 minutes of charging for an 17 hour drive. You would stop anyway for an hour and a half of that. I mean, I can't imagine that people are that can drive that long without stopping. I certainly can. So, but I think the challenge is if you don't have a home, if you're renting, that's where it becomes a tricky thing. We just sold our house and we're in a condo that we're renting, and we talked to the board and said, can I get a 120 charger? And a 120 charger is only going to give you 5 miles an hour, but that's fine. I if I just do that every night, it's no big deal. People always ask, how long does it take to charge? I go, a minute. Like, I don't sit there like I'm at a gas station. It takes 10 seconds. I plug it in and walk away. But then we used to have what's called a level 2 charger. That's going to give you about 30 miles in an hour. And the supercharger, the Tesla station, is going to give you somewhere around 300 to 500 or even more miles an hour. So it's like unbelievable how fast it is. And this is only getting better and better. Tesla's coming out with 1,000 mile an hour charging system now that they're slowly upgrading. And so that would make a charge like 12 minutes, a full charge, or 15 minutes or something like that. So it's basically getting, that if someone wants to think that that's a problem, that's, to help save the world, that's not a problem.
Right. I will agree with our experience. The first couple of 3 months that we had the Model 3, we just plugged into the wall and it was 3 miles an hour, but that's enough. You're at home. That's more than enough. We did go ahead and get the 30 mile an hour version just for more margin because we could afford it. But you can get by anywhere you have power. And then cross country, again, there are chargers all over the place. Tesla has these superchargers that really make it practical. Within 6 months of getting it, I had to take a trip to California and back for family business, and it just wasn't an issue. The bladder is a much bigger issue than charging the car. So cross country for the Tesla at least is not such an issue. Other people are doing better too. But again, you really almost always charge at home, and that you can do anywhere. Indeed, we drove to a relative in Pittsburgh, and we just we brought an extra long extension cord and plugged in overnight. And you can't do that with a gasoline car.
Another reason to back the Clean Energy Act or the Clean Energy Comprehensive Bill in Illinois is that it would require apartment houses to install chargers in a certain number of their parking places. So that would be another way that we could increase the infrastructure and make it easier for people to access that charge that they need.
And just think of the jobs that, will come for people needing to build that infrastructure. I mean, that's a big amount of work that needs done.
Oh, and I will also, if I could just toss in a clarification, if you do want the level 2 higher speed charging, you don't have to get a special fancy thing. You can put any outlet that's typically used for a dryer or an electric stove is all you need. You don't need exotic things. And it's probably a good idea to have that in your house anyway.
And most houses can handle that. I think what we've seen when we've talked to some apartment building owners, especially vintage buildings, is that they do need to upgrade the electrical, but that, you know what, they probably need to upgrade the electrical anyway.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so we're hearing that most of us are plugging in at home, and it's not particularly difficult to do that, and that those who live in apartments, there are policies proposed that might make that easier for them to be able to plug in a vehicle, but that really is a holdup. I know I have a brother who lives in Logan Square, and he would love a EV, but he has nowhere to charge it. And so that definitely is holding him back from doing such a thing. But I see Julian Brown has written in. Whoa, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Trying to keep up in the comments, that Chicago's passed an ordinance to require apartments and condos to do so. So that kind of change is happening. That kind of public policy is happening. And that's happening because of advocacy, from people saying, we need to do this. And some say because it's economic, and some say because it's a cool toy. And then some say the very breath we breathe depends on us doing this and doing it well and quickly. And so all of those things are coming together. And I see that Lauren has dropped in the chat our climate justice petition. So if you really want to talk to your legislators about that, check the chat for a link to do that. Please.
Someone asked about paying for a charge, and on my phone app where it maps out, it tells me where the chargers are. It tells you which ones are free and which ones aren't. Sometimes you do pay. They take a credit card, or you can, pay by using your phone. But I've personally never gone to one that I had to pay for. There are enough free ones around.
So what's interesting about the paying is, even if you pay at a commercial one, it's generally about half what gas is. But if you pay at home, it's kind of good and bad that Illinois has such cheap electricity. I mean, you would think that's great. It's not great when we're trying to convince people to get solar panels. The payback is really long. But for an electric car owner, at 7.5 cents a kilowatt, to go 100 miles is about $1.50. If gas is $3 a gallon, this is the fun thing. I don't look at the gas price going up or down a penny in the last 8 years. I'm over that. But so at 7.5, so about $1.50 to go 100 miles. So basically at $3 a gallon, it's like a 200 mile per gallon car. And I think what's wild is the adoption of this is coming because of the economics. Like, there's no turning back. This is getting cheaper and cheaper, and it's making more and more sense. And all the little things that someone might have as an issue with it are disappearing so fast. So I think, and the prices of the cars are definitely coming down. I think Tesla's working on a $25,000, I think they're going to call it the Model 2 or something like that. And when you start factoring in the, if they can get the rebates, I don't think they're going to, but even so, it's a normal price car, and it's going to go just as, fast as any of the others. So it'll all be good.
Yeah, since we're talking about cost, the last time I looked at the numbers in some detail, the cost of running a Tesla Model 3 anyway is roughly 3 cents a mile for power energy, assuming you're paying for it at home. It's not wildly different on it's more on the road, of course, you have to pay more, but almost always it's at home. 3 cents a mile roughly for fuel, 3 cents a mile for tires, wear and tear and replacement of tires, and roughly 3 cents a mile for insurance. And that's it. So you're about 10 cents a mile is the total cost of the car, operating cost, and the energy is only about a third of it.
So just following up on that, I had two referrals to buy Teslas, and then as part of that, you get 1,000 miles of free charging. So I have 2 of them. So my 1,000 miles each way I'm driving out here for free. So it's all good.
Oh, well, that's cool. I can't remember if it was when we were all talking before we started our recording today, but I grew up in the Detroit area. I have a long, legacy of having family members work at Ford. And, when we saw the F-150 get announced that it has an electric, version coming out, and the Mustang has an electric version coming out, I think some of that anxiety over, is this just a fad or is this really a thing? I mean, the F-150 being the most sold car in the United States, I think really, flags for people that this is here to stay. This is good for a number of reasons, economic, environmental, all of those things. And they're going to make it easier for us to do that. So, but we need, again, I'm going to harp on the policy because that's my job. We need favorable policy in our state to bring that charging infrastructure up to snuff at the federal level. You've got an infrastructure bill that's hoping to do exactly that as well. And so our legislators need to be hearing from us that these are things that are important to us, whether it's from an economic standpoint, whether it's from an environmental standpoint, whether it's from the standpoint of I want my kids to be able to breathe. I want your kids to be able to breathe, and grandkids. That's really critical, and our legislators need to hear from us. All right, were there any other questions in the chat that we didn't hit, or that questions people still have?
Can I follow up on something you just mentioned about the F-150? One of the interesting things about that car, we've been talking about resilient design in homes for a long time, and I give these lectures and I go, at some point, there's going to be a power outage, and you plug your electric car in and you power the house off the car. And the F-150 has all the electronics on board.
Yep.
So you can just buy that thing, and it's an enormous battery. I think it's like 140 kilowatt, like the Tesla I have is 75. And so I'm thinking to myself, what area of the country, who likes trucks and has problems with power? Oh, I don't know, Texas.
Texas.
So yeah, this is going to be revolutionary. And I think all the car manufacturers are going to start doing this, but to have that peace of mind that out in your driveway or garage, you've got the ability to go days, 140 kilowatts. Typical house uses 30 kilowatt hours in a day. If you go into survival mode, it's like 10. And this thing's got 140, and let's say it's half charged. I mean, you still have a week or more. Yeah, it's going to be.
So that is indeed leading to an important political point. The latest big Tesla factory for building the Tesla truck is in Texas. They're going to be later this year starting to produce. They're doing prototypes. You cannot buy a Tesla in Texas. It's illegal. They're not allowed to sell them in Texas.
They don't have the grid.
The traditional car dealers. Tesla does not have dealerships. You buy them from Tesla online. They have service centers, delivery centers. There's no dealer. And in Texas, you cannot buy a Tesla even now.
Wow. Policy, policy, policy matters. Voting matters.
Yes. And since I'm in Central Illinois, I'm gonna give a shout out to the Rivian manufacturing plant that's opening, beginning production soon here in an old Mitsubishi plant in Bloomington Normal, and that's a small pickup and SUV, and they're doing a lot of delivery vans for Amazon. Delivery vehicles, because they run all the time, are huge polluters. And so I'm excited that Rivian is going to be providing Amazon delivery vehicles. That is also a really cute truck. So with large battery and battery backup, that it's going to make, I think it's going to make a difference.
There was a question about batteries in the
Yeah.
chat as well. And so as the owner of a plug-in hybrid, I know that even if, so we have a Ford C-Max Energy. We have not talked about that car. They do not make that car anymore. But should I need to replace the battery in that car, as my daughter will be inheriting that hopefully soon when she starts to drive, it's a couple $1,000s, maybe $3, to give her a car that's paid for, that, you know, it's a no-brainer to us to do that. And so you drop another battery in the car and off you go. But it is, it's an expense, but what we don't pay in maintenance, what we don't pay in gas, makes a lot of sense for a new driver in our family. Anybody else want to share about battery replacement needs?
Well, I know there's the ability to recycle those, and there's also the ability to reuse them. So some of the companies have been playing around with taking the old batteries and using them for home backup batteries and other things. You know, the fact that it might be only 80% as good. Well, for a house, if you can get 5 or 10 of them together, whatever it is, who cares? That's great. And it'll do, that's certainly one aspect of it, is being able to reuse them, as well as hopefully getting to recycle them all the way. So I believe the battery evolution is really just starting, and they're gonna, that will be an issue that hopefully gets improved very quickly.
And these are, again, opportunities for jobs that, don't currently exist. So as I look at my 16-year-old, my 12-year-old, my 7.5-year-old, what they're inheriting, of a planet. And though that keeps me up at night sometimes, knowing that there are, things coming that we can't even dream of yet, or we're trying to dream of and put a plan in place, there's an opportunity for jobs and, a whole shift in our economy to be able to embrace that. That's awesome.
We're getting close to time, so maybe I think that we've made an attempt to answer the questions. If you have more, please get in touch with us, and we'll farm out those questions to Jenny and Nathan, so that they get answered. And Arthur.
Yeah, so let's wrap up. Was I doing this, or were you, Cindy? I can't remember.
I think you are.
Okay, well, I'll do it. So we're wrapping up by this awesome picture of Cindy, which is now my favorite. What can you do? What can you do at home? What can you do in your faith community? You can start a green team. Faith in Place is the place to find information about that. Any of us at Faith in Place would be happy to connect you with resources there, and a coach who will help you in your faith community along the way. You can sign up for a smart energy program, the two that we talked about earlier being Power Smart and Peak Time Savings. Power Smart's in Ameren territory. ComEd calls it something else.
Hourly pricing.
Oh, okay. That's real simple. Okay. So talk to your utility about signing up for one or both of those programs. Take a test drive in an EV, or find a neighbor or friend who has one and ask them to drive you around. Host an EV car show. I am dying to do this. So, most people like to talk about their vehicles and share. Why not, if your church, for example, or your house of worship has a parking lot or has space to do such a thing, why not host an EV car show? Get people together to talk about why they chose an EV, why they chose the EV they did. You could even have those, cool bikes, the electric bikes that people have a car show or an alternate, transportation kind of car show, and have a chance to show that off. And please tell your legislators to support clean energy legislation by filling out our petition that was in the chat, but will also likely be in the follow-up email that you'll receive soon. So we want to hear from you. Have you been inspired to act today? I hope that you have been, or at least inspired to be thinking about how you can act today. So what are some ways that you want to take action on climate change? If you could type that in the chat, we will share some of those things with you. As you type. And Lauren also put upcoming events in the chat. So if webinars are your jam, there are lots of ways that you can connect with Faith in Place and see all the different things that we're doing. Let's see, how have I been inspired to take action on climate change? So as a policy coordinator, I'm doing a lot of work on policy. So I am talking pretty regularly to my representatives and other representatives around the state about why clean energy legislation is important. And so hopefully we'll get that across the finish line here real soon. Kathy Gossard is telling us that the time is right for them to buy an electric car. I think you've got a hybrid, don't you? You've got a Prius or something like that. Ginny is going to be talking to her state senator about getting on board with the Clean Energy Jobs Act, or whatever our clean energy legislation ends up being called. Bill number and name to be determined soon. There are, again, petitions that you can sign that will go directly to your legislators to let them know that you're paying attention, that you know their voting record, that you want them to prioritize clean energy legislation. Samantha's going to talk to her legislators and show up at lobby day. We've done virtual lobby days. I think the time is coming where we might actually be able to do this in person again sometime soon. And so virtually or otherwise, speaking to your legislators is important. And we are coming up on time here. I don't see anything else in the chat. So I want to make sure that you know how to connect with us. You can follow us on all social media platforms at Faith in Place is the handle. You could go to our website, faithinplace.org. You can email us at info@faithinplace.org. You can email Cindy, just first name @faithinplace.org. You can email me, Christina, @faithinplace.org. And if we can't answer your question, we can find an answer for you or connect you with someone who can. And I think that's everything.
Thanks everybody for coming. It was really great to hear about other people's experiences and to share a little bit about why we think green EVs are part of our future. Thanks for being here. All the best. Let's stay connected.